I shouldn't be telling you this. Not because I'm afraid you won't believe me, but because part of me knows that saying it out loud makes it more real. Makes it harder to pretend it was just exhaustion or the dark playing tricks on my eyes. I stayed in those woods longer than I should have. I knew it even then. There was a moment, clear as anything, when I could have packed up, walked back to the truck, and driven away. Nothing was wrong yet. Nothing had happened. But I didn't. And by the time I realized something had changed, something fundamental, it was already too late to leave the same way I came in. It started quietly. That's the part I keep coming back to. No warning, no sudden shift. Just a slow, almost gentle unease that settled in without asking permission. I remember the air felt heavier than it should have for late afternoon, thick in a way that made every breath feel slightly delayed. The trees weren't moving much, but I could hear them. Soft creaks, like something shifting its weight just out of sight. I told myself it was normal. Forests make noise. That's what they do. I even laughed at myself once, just a quick breath through my nose, trying to shake it off. But the sound didn't carry the way it should have. It felt swallowed, like the woods didn't want to let it travel. I had been out there a few days already, long enough to settle into a rhythm. Wake up, check the perimeter, gather wood, keep the fire small. It wasn't survival, not really. More like distancing. I needed quiet, space, and I found it at first, the kind of silence that feels earned. But by the third day, it changed. Subtle at first, little things. My gear wouldn't be exactly where I left it. Not moved far, just enough that I'd hesitate, question myself. I blamed it on fatigue, on routine blurring together. That's what I told myself anyway. The first real moment, the one I should have listened to, came just before sunset. The light was thinning, that gray-blue hour where everything loses its edges. I was crouched near the fire pit, adjusting a stone that had shifted when I felt it. Not heard, not seen, felt. Like pressure, just behind me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to matter. I froze. I didn't turn around right away. I don't know why. Maybe some instinct was already trying to protect me. When I did finally look, there was nothing there. Just trees, long shadows stretching between them. But something was wrong with the spacing. I couldn't explain it then. Still can't. Not really. It just felt like the forest had rearranged itself slightly, like pieces of a puzzle forced into the wrong places. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every sound felt deliberate, measured, like it was waiting for me to notice. Twigs snapping at uneven intervals, leaves brushing together when there was no wind. At one point, I heard what sounded like footsteps circling the camp, slow and careful. I called out once, just to break the tension. No answer, just silence again. Thicker this time, pressing in. I remember gripping the knife longer than I needed to, my hand cramping around it, because letting go felt like admitting something was out there. Morning should have made it better. It didn't. The light came, but it felt wrong, too pale, too flat, like it wasn't reaching the ground the way it should. I checked the perimeter again, slower this time. That's when I saw the tracks. At first I thought they were just distorted prints, maybe a large dog, but they didn't make sense. The stride was too long, too spaced out, and the impressions, deeper than they should have been, like whatever made them carried more weight than its shape suggested. I followed them for a few steps before stopping myself. Something in me said not to, not yet. So I backed away, returned to camp, pretended I hadn't seen them. I wish I had left then. I've replayed that decision more times than I can count. The way I hesitated, the way I looked around, waiting for some kind of confirmation that I was overreacting. But the forest gave me nothing, no answer, no reassurance, just that same quiet, watchful stillness. And for some reason, I stayed, told myself I needed one more night, just one, to prove to myself that I wasn't losing it. By the afternoon, the feeling of being watched wasn't subtle anymore. It had direction, weight. I could stand in one spot and know, without turning, which side of the tree line it was coming from. Always just beyond sight, always adjusting when I did. I tried to ignore it, focused on small tasks, sharpening a blade, repacking supplies. But my hands kept slipping. My attention wouldn't hold. Every few seconds, I'd glance up, expecting to see something between the trees. And every time, there was nothing. Just enough nothing to keep me doubting. The second night was worse. There's no gradual way to describe it. It just was. The sounds came closer. Not louder, closer. Like whatever was out there had decided distance didn't matter anymore. At one point, I heard breathing. Low, steady, not human, not any animal I'd ever heard before. It had a rhythm to it, almost controlled, like it knew exactly how much sound it was making. I sat there, frozen, staring into the dark, trying to match the direction of the sound with the shapes around me. That's when I saw it for the first time. Not clearly, not fully. Just a break in the outline of a tree that shouldn't have been there. Taller than it should have been. Wrong in a way my brain didn't want to process. I didn't move. I don't think I even breathed. The shape stayed there for a long time, or maybe it just felt that way. And then, slowly, it shifted. Not stepping out, not revealing itself. Just leaning slightly, like it was adjusting its view of me. That small movement told me more than anything else could have. It was aware. It was watching, and it had been long before I noticed. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember being on my feet, moving, the fire behind me collapsing into sparks as I passed it. The forest didn't open up the way it had before. Paths I thought I knew twisted into unfamiliar lines. Branches caught at my clothes, my skin. And behind me, I could hear it moving. Not crashing, not chasing the way an animal would. Keeping pace, effortless, like it knew I wouldn't get far. At some point I realized something worse than being followed. It was guiding me. Every turn I took, every direction I chose, it adjusted just enough to keep me moving where it wanted, hurting me deeper without ever showing itself fully. The understanding hit me all at once, sharp and cold. I wasn't escaping. I was being led. I don't know how long it lasted. Time didn't hold together out there. But eventually, I stumbled into a clearing I didn't recognize. Too open, too still, and that's where it stopped hiding. I won't describe it in detail. Not because I can't, but because I don't think putting it into clear terms does it justice. It stood upright, taller than any man, its outline wrong in ways that made my eyes ache if I focused too hard. The head, not quite wolf, not quite anything that belongs here. And the eyes, reflective, but not like an animal's. There was thought in them, intention. It didn't rush me, didn't attack. It just stood there, watching, the same way it had been since the beginning. And in that moment, I understood something I wish I didn't. It hadn't followed me into the woods. It had been there long before I arrived, waiting, watching, deciding. I don't remember how I got out. That's the part that scares me the most. There's a gap there, a stretch of time that's just gone. One moment I'm in that clearing, and the next I'm at the edge of the forest, my truck in sight, keys already in my hand like I'd been holding them the whole time. No sound behind me, no movement, just silence again. Normal silence. I drove without looking back. I didn't stop until the trees were miles behind me. And even then, I kept expecting to see something in the mirror. A shape, a shadow, something keeping pace. It's been a while now, long enough that I should have convinced myself it wasn't real, that it was stress, isolation, anything else. But there are things I can't explain. Marks on my gear I don't remember getting. Dirt in places it shouldn't be. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear it again. That breathing, low, controlled, just at the edge of perception. And the worst part isn't that it might still be out there. It's that I don't think it ever lost track of me. I tried to go back to normal after that. That's the first mistake people always assume you wouldn't make, but you do. You convince yourself routine can overwrite something like that. That if you just fall back into familiar patterns, eat the same food, walk the same streets, sleep in the same bed, your mind will file it away as something temporary. Misunderstood. I told myself I was lucky, that whatever happened out there ended. But there was a detail I kept avoiding. Something small, something I didn't want to give weight to, because once I did, everything else would follow. When I got back, my boots were clean. Not just dry, clean. Like they hadn't touched forest ground in days. And I don't remember cleaning them. The first few nights were quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but I took it as a win. I slept longer than I had out there, deeper, too, the kind of sleep that drags you under fast. But I started waking up at the same time every night. Not gradually, suddenly. Eyes open, breath caught halfway, like something had interrupted me mid-dream. 3:17. Always the same. I checked the clock enough times to be sure it wasn't coincidence, and every time there was that same feeling. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. Like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. At first I stayed in bed, listened. My place is small, so you get used to how it sounds at night. Pipes settling, floorboards cooling, the faint hum of electricity in the walls. But layered under that, barely there, was something else. A second rhythm. Slow, measured. Not inside the apartment. Not exactly outside either. Just present. The same cadence I heard in the woods. That breathing, controlled, patient. I told myself it was neighbors, someone walking past, air moving through the vents. Anything that had edges I could define. But it didn't match anything I knew. After a few nights, I started getting up. That was the second mistake. There's a difference between hearing something and looking for it. One leaves room for doubt. The other takes that away. I'd sit up, wait a few seconds, then swing my legs over the side of the bed, slow, careful, like I didn't want to disturb something already awake. The floor was always colder than it should have been. Not freezing, just wrong. Like the temperature had dropped in that one spot and nowhere else. I checked the windows first, every time. Curtains still drawn, glass intact. Nothing outside but empty street and parked cars. No movement, no shadows shifting where they shouldn't. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got sharper when I confirmed there was nothing there. Like the absence itself was part of it. The first real change happened on the 5th night. I remember because I almost didn't get up. I was tired, more than tired, worn down in a way that sleep wasn't fixing. But 3:17 came, like it always did, and my eyes snapped open. The room felt smaller. That's the only way I can put it. Not physically, just compressed, like the air had less space to move. I sat there longer than usual, listening. And that's when I realized something had shifted. The sound wasn't distant anymore. It was closer. Not in the room, not yet, but closer than it had been before. I stood up anyway, walked to the door instead of the window this time. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me already understood. My hand hovered over the handle longer than I want to admit. There was a moment where I almost went back to bed, almost chose not to know. But I opened it. The hallway was empty, lights off, just the faint spill from my apartment stretching out across the floor. Everything looked normal, still. But the smell hit me immediately. Damp earth. Faint but unmistakable. The kind of smell you only get deep in the woods, where sunlight doesn't quite reach the ground. It didn't belong there. Not in a hallway that gets cleaned twice a week. I stepped out anyway. Each footstep felt louder than it should have, like the sound wasn't dispersing properly, just dropping straight down and staying there. I moved slowly, listening between each step. The breathing stopped the moment I opened the door. Completely. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. Silence is worse when you know something was just there a second ago. Halfway down the hall, I saw it. Not the thing itself, not directly, just a mark. On the wall, about shoulder height. At first glance, it looked like a smear. Dirt, maybe. But when I got closer, I saw the shape. It wasn't random. It curved slightly, tapering at one end. Too deliberate to be accidental. I didn't touch it right away. I just stood there, staring, trying to convince myself it had always been there, and I'd just never noticed. Then I noticed the others. Further down the hall, fainter but the same shape, same height, spaced unevenly, like something had moved along the wall, steady but not rushed. My chest tightened in a way I couldn't control. Not panic. Something colder, more precise. Recognition again, the same feeling I had in the clearing, just before it stepped fully into view. I backed away. Slow at first, then faster when I realized my legs were already trying to move on their own. I got back inside, shut the door, locked it without thinking. And that's when I made the third mistake. I looked through the peephole. For a second, there was nothing. Just the empty hallway, dim and quiet. And then, movement. Not crossing the hall, not approaching, just existing within the frame. Too close to the door to fully see. A shape that didn't fit the perspective. Like it was both too large and too near at the same time. I couldn't make out details. My brain wouldn't let me focus long enough. But I saw enough to know it was facing the door. Facing me. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped. My hand hit the wall behind me, grounding me just enough to stay upright. I didn't look again. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at the door like it might move, like the handle might turn on its own. But it didn't. Nothing happened. No sound. No pressure. Just silence again, thick and waiting. Eventually, I went back to bed. I don't remember deciding to. I just found myself there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning. When it finally came, everything looked normal again. The hallway was clean. No marks on the wall, no smell, nothing to prove what I'd seen. That should have been enough to dismiss it. A trick of exhaustion, residual fear from the woods. But something didn't line up, something small. When I checked the door, there were scratches on the outside. Not deep, not obvious, but there. Thin lines in the paint, clustered near the handle. And they weren't there before. I know that because I checked. And now, every night at 3:17, I don't wait for the sound anymore. I wait for the moment it stops. I stopped pretending it wasn't happening after that. You can only explain so much away before the explanations start sounding thinner than the thing you're trying to hide from. I didn't tell anyone, not because I thought they wouldn't believe me, but because saying it out loud felt like inviting it closer, like giving it permission to exist somewhere beyond my own head. So I kept it to myself and started adjusting. I stopped sleeping normally. set alarms before 3:17, just to be awake when it happened. It didn't help. The moment still came, exact as ever, like something deeper than habit was keeping time. And the pattern changed again. The breathing didn't always start anymore. Sometimes there was nothing at all. Just silence stretching too far, too perfectly. I learned quickly that those nights were worse, because that's when it moved. Not loudly, not enough to point to, just small shifts. A creak where there shouldn't be one. A faint pressure change in the room. Once, I swear the edge of my blanket tightened slightly, like something had brushed against it. I didn't react. I forced myself not to. Because I understood something then that I wish I hadn't. This wasn't random anymore. It was testing, watching how I responded, learning. One night, I broke. 3:17. No sound, no warning, just that same heavy stillness. And then I felt it, right at the edge of the bed. Not weight, exactly. More like presence. Close enough that my skin reacted before my mind did. Every instinct told me not to look, that if I turned my head, I'd see something I wouldn't be able to forget. I turned anyway. There was nothing there, but the blanket was pulled tighter than it should have been, just slightly. Enough that I knew it hadn't always been like that. I didn't sleep after that. I just lay there until morning, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I still understood the rules of my own space. The next day I checked the door again. The scratches were deeper. I started counting them. I don't know why that became the thing I focused on, but it did. Maybe because numbers feel stable, measurable, something you can track when everything else refuses to stay in place. The first time I really paid attention, there were 6 scratches near the handle. Thin, uneven, angled slightly downward, like whatever made them hadn't needed to reach, just drag. The next night, there were 8. That's when it stopped being something I could ignore between episodes. It wasn't just happening at 3:17 anymore. It was continuing, progressing, and I wasn't there to see most of it. I tried staying up all night, lights on, TV running, just to fill the space with noise that belonged to me. For a while, it almost worked. The apartment felt normal again, anchored by familiar sounds. I even caught myself drifting, just a little, somewhere past 2. Then everything cut out. Not the power. The TV was still on. The lights still worked. But the sound, gone. Like someone had pulled it out of the air. The screen kept moving, people talking, mouths forming words I couldn't hear. And underneath that silence, I felt it again, closer than ever. Not across the room, not at the edge of the bed, right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body locked in a way I've never felt before, like even the idea of moving had been shut down. But I could feel it. The same controlled presence from the woods, patient, measured, studying. And then, slowly, something brushed the back of my neck. Not claws, not fur. I wish it had been something that simple. It felt deliberate, careful, like it was learning what I was made of. The sound came back all at once, loud enough to make me flinch forward, breaking whatever held me in place. I turned then, fast, too fast, and there was nothing behind me. Just the couch, the wall, the TV still playing like nothing had happened. But the room felt different, smaller again. That night, I didn't wait for morning. I grabbed my keys and left. Didn't pack anything, didn't think it through. Just got in the car and drove, the same way I had when I left the woods. Fast, aimless, like distance alone could fix it. I ended up parked on the side of a road just outside the city, engine off, hands still gripping the wheel long after I stopped. It was quiet out there, open, no walls, no corners for something to hide in. I remember thinking that was safer. I was wrong, because when I finally looked up at the rearview mirror, there was something in the back seat. Not fully visible, not clear. Just a shape that didn't belong, too large for the space, sitting where nothing had been a second before. And the worst part wasn't that it was there. It was that it had been quiet the entire drive. I didn't turn around. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not courage, not control, just refusal. Because something in me understood that if I looked directly at it in that space, inside the car, that close, there wouldn't be any distance left to protect me. So I kept my eyes on the mirror, watched it the only way I could handle. It didn't move much. That was worse. Just sat there, folded into the back seat in a way that didn't match the shape of the space. Too tall, too long, like it had adjusted itself to fit, but not completely. The outline kept shifting at the edges, like my eyes couldn't hold it steady. But the eyes, those I could see, faint, reflective, fixed on me through the mirror. I tried to breathe normally. Failed. My chest kept tightening, pulling air in too shallow, too fast. My hands were still locked on the wheel, knuckles aching, but I didn't loosen my grip. It felt like the only thing keeping me anchored. Then it leaned forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just closer. The mirror filled with more of it, the shape resolving just enough to make my stomach drop. I could see the angle of its head now, the length of the snout. Not fully clear, but enough that my brain stopped trying to call it anything else. It had been in the woods, and now it was here. A sound slipped out of me before I could stop it. Not a word, just something raw, pulled up from somewhere deeper than thought. That's when it reacted. Its head tilted, slight, curious, like it recognized the sound. And in that moment, something clicked into place in the worst way possible. All those nights, the breathing, the waiting, the way it adjusted to me, learned me. This wasn't just following, it knew me. I don't remember deciding to move, but my foot slammed down on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires screaming against the pavement as I pulled back onto the road. I didn't look away from the mirror. Couldn't. The shape shifted with the motion, but it didn't lose balance, didn't even brace. It just stayed there, watching. The speed climbed without me thinking about it. Streetlights started passing faster, stretching into lines. The engine strained, the whole car vibrating under me, but I didn't slow down. I kept waiting for something, anything, to change, for it to disappear, for the mirror to show an empty seat. It didn't. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. No movement, no transition. 1 second it was there, filling the frame, and the next the back seat was empty. Completely. Like it had never been there at all. I almost crashed. My foot lifted off the gas too fast, the car jerking as the speed dropped. I had to fight the wheel to keep control, heart slamming hard enough to make my vision pulse. I pulled over again, harder this time, the car rocking slightly as it stopped. And then there was silence. Real silence. No breathing, no pressure, no sense of something just outside my view. For the first time since the woods, I felt alone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the back seat directly now, not through the mirror. Nothing. I even reached back at one point, my hand shaking as I touched the fabric, pressing into it like I expected it to give differently where it had been sitting. It didn't. Everything felt normal. And that's what made it worse. Because as I sat there, trying to steady my breathing, trying to convince myself it was over, that whatever connection had followed me from the woods had finally broken, I noticed something small, something I hadn't seen before. On the inside of the rear window, just barely visible in the reflection of the street light. Long, thin streaks. Not scratches, condensation marks, like something had been breathing there, from the inside. I didn't go home after that. I drove until the sky started to lighten, until the edges of things came back into focus, and the world felt structured again. I told myself I just needed distance, a reset, somewhere neutral, where it wouldn't know where to find me. That idea didn't last long, because the moment I stopped the car and stepped out, I felt it again. Not as strong, not right on top of me like before, but there, faint, directional, like a thread stretched between us that hadn't snapped, just loosened. I checked into a roadside motel without thinking too much about it. Didn't care about the place, the cost, nothing. I just needed walls that weren't mine, a door that hadn't already been marked. The room looked normal, smelled like cheap detergent and something stale underneath. I locked the door, checked the windows, even pulled the curtain tight enough to block out the morning light. Everything felt contained, manageable. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. At some point, I must have drifted. Not real sleep, the kind where your body shuts down just enough to blur the edges. And of course, that's when it happened. I woke up before checking the time. I already knew. 3:17. Different place, same moment. The air felt wrong immediately, colder than it should have been, pressing against my skin in a way that made me fully aware of every inch of space around me. I didn't move at first, just listened. No breathing. That should have been a relief. It wasn't, because I heard something else. A soft, slow drag. Not outside, inside the room. My eyes adjusted just enough to make out the floor near the door. And that's where I saw it. The shadow, too long, too solid, stretching inward from the bottom of the door like something on the other side was pressed close, too close. But the proportions didn't match anything human. The outline shifted slightly, like it was adjusting, trying to fit into a space it wasn't meant for. I held my breath without meaning to. And then, a second shadow appeared. Not from outside, from the side of the bed. I didn't react right away. I couldn't. My body just stalled, like it couldn't decide which direction meant survival. The shadow near the door stayed where it was, stretched thin and wrong. But the second one, closer, shifted again. Slow, careful, climbing the side of the bed in a way shadows aren't supposed to move. That's when I understood something I'd been avoiding. It didn't need to come through doors. The air beside me changed first. A subtle pressure, like the room was making space for something that hadn't been there a second ago. Then the mattress dipped. Slightly, but enough. Every muscle in my body locked. I kept my eyes forward, fixed on the wall, because turning felt like crossing a line I wouldn't be able to uncross. The dip deepened, inch by inch, like something was lowering itself onto the edge of the bed with deliberate control. Not rushed, not aggressive, familiar. That word hit me harder than anything else, because it was true. The same presence from the woods, from the apartment, from the car. Closer now than it had ever been, and still patient, still learning. I felt it before I heard it. That same controlled breathing, but quieter now, refined. Right behind me, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth of it against the back of my neck. My skin reacted instantly, a cold ripple moving down my spine that had nothing to do with temperature. I wanted to move. I tried to. Nothing. Not fear this time. Not exactly. It felt allowed. Like whatever was there had decided I wouldn't move, and my body agreed without asking me. Then something pressed lightly into the mattress beside my leg. A second point of contact. Not claws. Not weight in the way it should have been. Just pressure. Testing again. Mapping. I don't know how long it stayed like that. Time stretched thin, every second pulling longer than it should. My thoughts started slipping, repeating the same thing over and over. Don't turn, don't turn, don't turn. Until the words didn't even feel like mine anymore. And then, quietly, it exhaled, closer than before, right at my ear. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried something with it. Not a voice, not words, just intent. Clear enough that I understood it without needing language. It wasn't hunting. It had already found me. The pressure lifted. The mattress rose back, slow and controlled, like whatever had been there didn't want to disturb the space too much on its way off. The air shifted again, that same subtle adjustment, and then nothing. No second shadow, no breathing, no presence. Just me, alone in the room, able to move again like nothing had ever been holding me in place. I didn't stay. I don't remember grabbing my things. I don't remember unlocking the door. I just remember being outside, the early morning air hitting me hard enough to make me feel real again. I got in the car, hands shaking, and drove. Not fast this time, just far. But it didn't matter, because somewhere between one stretch of empty road and the next, I realized something I should have understood sooner. It wasn't appearing anymore. It was choosing when to be seen. And that meant even when I couldn't feel it, it could still be there. I stopped trying to outrun it after that. Distance didn't matter. New places didn't matter. The pattern held no matter where I went. Same time, same presence, same slow escalation. The only thing that changed was how close it let itself get. So I did the only thing I had left. I stayed still. Not just physically, I mean completely. I picked a place, shut myself in, and stripped everything down to the simplest version of living I could manage. No distractions, no noise unless I made it. I wanted to see what it would do if I stopped reacting. If I gave it nothing to study, nothing to learn from. The first night like that felt different immediately. 3:17 came, like always. But this time, I didn't look around, didn't listen for it. I just lay there, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling, breathing slow on purpose. For a while, nothing happened. Then the room changed. Not colder, not smaller, closer. Like the space between things had tightened. I felt it near the foot of the bed first. Not touching, just there, waiting. I kept my breathing steady, even when every part of me wanted to break and move, to check, to confirm. I didn't. Minutes passed, or seconds. I couldn't tell anymore. Then it moved. Not toward my head this time, toward my hands. Resting on my chest, fingers slightly curled. I felt the air shift just above them. Then slowly, something lowered until it almost made contact. I could feel the difference in temperature, the faint disturbance, like something hovering just a fraction of an inch away. Testing again, but different, more precise. Like it wasn't just mapping where I was anymore, like it was learning how I worked. I held still, and then one of my fingers twitched, not by choice, small, involuntary, but enough. The reaction was immediate. That same controlled movement, but sharper now. The presence closed the distance in an instant, not touching, but right there, surrounding my hand completely. The air tightened, pressure building just enough to make my pulse spike. It had been waiting for that, for me, for any sign. I forced my hand still again, locking every muscle I could. The pressure held for a moment longer, like it was deciding something. Then it eased, slowly, carefully. But it didn't move away. It stayed there, hovering, And that's when I understood the part I'd been missing. It wasn't just observing me, it was training me. Every night, every reaction, every mistake, shaping what I did next. The realization hit hard enough to almost break my control. My chest tightened, breath threatening to spike, and I had to fight it down, force it back into something steady. Because I knew, if I reacted now, if I gave it anything, it would get closer. A long stretch of nothing followed, the kind that makes you question if it's still there at all. And then, slowly, my hand lifted, not all the way, just slightly, like something underneath it had applied the smallest amount of upward pressure. I didn't move, I didn't help it, but I didn't stop it either. And for the first time since this started, it made me move. I wish I could tell you it escalated into something louder, something clearer, an attack, a fight, anything that would make it easier to explain, easier to survive in my own head afterward. But it didn't. That's not how it works. The worst of it happens quietly. After that night, after it made me move, something in me shifted. Not physically, not in a way anyone else would notice, but internally, something gave way, like a line had been crossed without my permission. I still woke at 3:17, still felt it, still knew when it was there, but the fear changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. It wasn't panic. It was acceptance. And that terrified me more than anything that came before, because I stopped resisting, not completely, not at first, but enough. There were nights I didn't hold still as long, nights I let my breathing slip, just slightly, just enough to feel how it reacted. And it always did, precise, immediate, closing distance in ways I couldn't track, only feel. The room would tighten, the air would shift, and I'd know I'd given it something it wanted. I started losing time again. Not like in the woods, shorter gaps, minutes, maybe. I'd be lying there, aware, focused on staying still, and then suddenly I'd be in a different position, on my side instead of my back, one arm off the bed, once sitting up without remembering doing it. Every time it happened, the same thing followed, that feeling of being watched, closer than before. One night, I found myself standing in the middle of the room, no memory of getting there, just the cold floor under my feet and the overwhelming certainty that I hadn't moved there on my own. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I could feel it behind me, taller than it should be, close enough that the space between us felt intentional, like a decision. I think that's when it reached whatever it had been working toward, because after that, it didn't come every night. The pattern broke. Days passed without anything, no waking at 3:17, no presence, no sound. At first I thought it was over, that whatever connection had formed had finally ended. I almost believed it, until I realized something worse. I stopped waiting for it, not because I felt safe, because I didn't need the time anymore. The awareness didn't come in moments, it stayed, a constant low pressure at the edge of everything I did. Walking, sitting, even now. I don't have to check the room. I don't have to listen. I know. That's the part I don't think people understand. You expect something like this to leave marks, scratches, sounds, evidence you can point to and say, there, that's where it was. But it doesn't work like that. The only thing it really takes is certainty. And it leaves you with something in return. Not fear. Not exactly. Recognition. I still see the woods sometimes. Not in dreams, just in flashes. The way the trees didn't line up right. The way the space between them felt occupied, even when it looked empty. And every now and then, I catch that same detail somewhere it shouldn't be. A corner of a room that feels too deep. A shadow that holds its shape a second too long. It's never fully there, But it's never fully gone, either. I don't go back to the woods. I don't need to. Whatever I found out there, or whatever found me, didn't stay behind. And if you're waiting for me to tell you how to stop it, how to break whatever this is, I can't. Because I don't think it's following me anymore. I think it's finished learning, and now it's just deciding what to do next.